Give me a D. Give me an E. Give me a Pression. Depression. Yes. That's what we're talking about today. It's page 325 in your book. So let's go there real quick. 325. This should be a short video. This is the second time I've done it because the first time the microphone was off. So I went back to check it to make sure, and guess what? Nothing. I mean, you could see me doing this and all this, but no sound. So let's try it this time. The Depression came after World War One, and you will see. I mean, you had the Roaring Twenties. One of the things your book does not mention that led to part of the Depression was credit. Credit became widely available. People started using credit to buy everything. If you couldn't afford it, let's go out and get it. Roaring Twenties, why not? You know. And your book lists some other causes. Another one it does not mention is reparations from Germany. And we won't get into that because, my goodness, that is a deep, deep subject. I've got to color my beard, my goodness. But can't. So, anyway, the reparations of Germany, Germany repaying back their war costs, that was a big, big issue, but it's very, very complicated. You'll get into it in higher levels, but your book doesn't mention that. But just wanted to make you aware that there were more causes than what your book mentions. One of the things we did, though, is we loaned allies in World War One about $10 billion. And they said, yeah, we'll pay you back. You know, loan me a five, I'll pay you back next week. No, they didn't. The only country that did was Finland. And so our national debt went up from about $1 billion to $24 billion in 3 years. Now, $24 billion today, as far as national debt, does not sound like much, but at the time, astronomical. And so Congress is going to start to do some different things that are going to cause the Depression as well. One of the things that happened in 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. Now, if you'll pull out a $1 bill, 5, 10, 50, 100, whatever, 20, and mail it to P.O. Box 10, never mind. You'll notice on it it says Federal Reserve Note. The Federal Reserve, since 1913, has been in charge of printing our money. They are not an official branch of the government or government entity, but they have a lot of power. They loan money to the banks, and they set our interest rate. So, and you've seen our president now complain about the Federal Reserve at times. He would be like, hey, y'all need to lower the interest rates. We'll have an even more booming economy. And the Federal Reserve actually raised them a couple of times at the start of the Trump administration, and the economy still boomed regardless. But they raised the interest rates from 3.5% to 6%. That was between the years of 1928 and 1929. Now, that's the cost that banks borrow on. So if you own a bank and you go out and you borrow from the Federal Reserve, you would be paying 6% interest. Well, what are you going to do to your customers? You're going to pass it along at 8 or 9. And it's going to up the cost of borrowing money from banks. So keep that in mind. That was one of the big things that happened. One of the biggest was the Smoot-Hawley tariff. Smoot-Hawley tariff. Now, we've talked about tariffs ad nauseum in this class and what they are. It's where we charge countries money to sell their goods in this country, just like we're charged to sell American-made products in other countries. But we had the highest import tariff ever in the history of the United States under Smoot-Hawley, to the point that in the years from 1929, there it is, 1929 to 1932, we were making at one time $7 billion in overseas sales, foreign country sales. And in that span from 1929 to 1932, because of the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which passed in 1930, we went down to $2.5 billion. So we dropped from 7 billion to 2.5. That's revenue coming into the United States. That's going to hurt business. That's going to hurt consumers. That's going to hurt everyone. And just to give you an example, your book talks about the danger of tariffs. And it's talking about Swiss watches. Now, most people don't wear watches anymore. They'll wear Fitbits or the iWatch, but, you know, an old traditional watch, people don't wear them that much. But Swiss were fine watchmakers, and they cost some money, but not as much as an automobile. So when we upped the tariffs on Swiss watches, guess what they did? They upped the tariff on us offloading automobiles in Switzerland. Well, you can sell a lot of watches for the cost of a car. And our automobile sales, they went down. Everything that we sold overseas went down. And Europe was angry about it, but it was a major, major problem. Now, real quickly, I want you to understand people are going to blame Herbert Hoover for the Depression. A lot of people do. They say, well, it's Herbert Hoover's fault. Not really. Economies go up and down. Okay? You'll have a good year. You'll have a bad year. You'll have a good year. Just like the stock market, it has times that it rises bull and bear markets. And this was one of those downturns. There were a lot of things that we did. The government could have fixed some corrections, like got rid of the Smoot-Hawley tariff. They could have gotten rid of the Federal Reserve, or at least regulated it more. Excuse me. But they didn't. What the government did do, and Herbert Hoover did this before FDR became president. You hear that Hoover just kind of sat back and watched. No, he didn't. He spent several $billion trying to fix the economy. He also supported the Federal Farm Board. He supported and endorsed the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. These are government projects to help the economy. Guess what? Didn't work. It was just more government intervention. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he was running for president, said that government really shouldn't be involved in the economy that much, that there were other things you could do. And guess what FDR did when he got to be president? He basically brought in a form of socialism to this country. This country would have never thought of doing the things that FDR did back in the 1800s. There's no way. But FDR brings them in and comes up with all kinds of programs, all kinds of things. And you'll talk more about those in U.S. history. But FDR won the election, and he was elected in 1932, and he transformed the federal government. I guess the point I want you to see, a couple of things. The unemployment rate was about 33% at the height of the Depression. After all that FDR did, and a lot of the jobs that he created were government jobs. You would go out and you would build a shelter, or you would build a rock wall, or you would build a school, or you would fix a road. Even with all those government jobs, the lowest the unemployment rate ever got during the Depression was 14%. 14% of Americans were out of a job. That's better than 33%, but still a far cry from where we normally are in this country. The thing that got us out of the Great Depression was World War II. And there was a concerted effort in this country to build things, and it so happened it was a war machine. But World War II is basically what got us out of the Depression. You're going to find a lot of times that government intervention doesn't help. If it helps a little bit, it's very little. There have been programs that presidents and Congress have tried over the years to fix the economy, and a lot of times it hurts it more than fixes it. One last thing. The reason we call it a depression is because Herbert Hoover didn't want to scare people. He didn't want to worry people. And to him, depression meant like we're pressing it down. We're tamping it down just a little bit. And it was an economic downturn, but he thought that sounded too harsh, or bad economy sounded too harsh. He said, well, it's just a little depression. There's just a little depression. And that term stuck. And now when you hear the term depression, you think, my goodness, the world is ending. So that's kind of how that came to be, and that term stuck. It's called the Great Depression because it lasted for so many years. And the Great Depression was actually made up of several economic downturns along the way. It wasn't one continuous. It was just one after another, after another, after another. Okay, so that ends chapter 17. If you notice, we're about 50 pages away, 55 pages, 60 from finishing the book. We're close. We're close to the end of the school. Are y'all excited? But tomorrow, I know you won't be excited about this, you're going to have an open book test. Your assignment for today, review. There's a list of people, places, and terms on page 327 if you want to look at that. What I will do is actually send you a test. It will have different facets to it, different elements to it, but it's all open book, so there's no reason you can't make 100 on it. But take your time with it. That's all you have to do tomorrow. In your instructions for your assignment tomorrow, it will have attached a test, and you'll take the test. So take your time with it, do good, get the answers right, and then submit it. And on Friday, we will meet via Zoom. Miss y'all. Hope you're doing well. And we will start on chapter 18 on Monday, Lord willing. And y'all, just have a good night. Review a little bit. Look over where those terms are in your book where you can find them more easily, and be ready for tomorrow. And we'll talk to you face to face via the internet on Friday.